After the death of Takatha Mandata, the Omnic monk who had hoped to usher in a world of peace between the Omnics and humans, Tracer had felt responsible. She had been out fighting crime every night since. Tracer wouldn't quit, she couldn't, though her body ached and felt like it was going to fall apart. As Tracer stood atop the rooftop of a tall building, exhaustion began to creep up on her, noticing a strange feeling enveloping her as her mental state began to drift. Her body began to feel like it was floating. Sleep took a hold of her. Tracer awoke to odd sounds echoing around her as the morning sun blinded. Tracer looked around the rooftop. Chimneys funneled smoke and strange Victorian-style houses lined the streets, met with an unusual crowd that scampered about below. A sudden realization struck Tracer. She was not in her time anymore. Tracer began to rattle with her chronal harness. Something had gone terribly wrong. Her harness, no, her powers, didn't activate. Tracer ran out onto the street, thinking that perhaps her momentum could kickstart her power and drive her back into the future. Bang. Tracer had run into a man as they both fell backward. "I'm very sorry, sir," Tracer said, as she tried to help him up. The man stared at her with a humble smile as he dusted himself off and fixed his glasses and tweaked his mustache. "It's quite alright, my dear," the man said, as he noted an injury now appearing on Tracer's leg. This was unusual for Tracer, and she felt uncomfortable, as she couldn't rewind time to heal it. Luckily, the man was a physician, and he offered to help treat her leg. The gentleman helped her limp back to his home. The man introduced himself as Henry as he began to treat the wound on Tracer's leg. "Henry Jekyll." "I don't mean to judge," Henry said, gazing at Tracer's strange outfit, "but you're not from around here, are you?" Tracer reluctantly looked at the man, rather embarrassed, and began to open up, though the man, as the story went on, seemed less fearful than Tracer had anticipated, as a story about a woman that fights crime and had time traveled from far into the future didn't seem to faze him as much as she thought. Henry concocted a serum that he got Tracer to drink. With a little rest, it wasn't long before Tracer felt something return. Her power was back. Thanks to Henry's serum, Tracer had regained all her health and then some, stating to Henry out loud that she felt like she could fend off any monster. These words caught Henry off guard as he fell silent, as he himself began to open up about a problem that he was having. Henry was being haunted by something. Tracer, being Tracer, offered her services immediately, and it was the least that she could do after Henry had healed her. Henry mentioned that the monster would only come at night, forcing him to lock himself in his room for his own safety. As night creaked and Henry went to bed, Tracer lay awake, vigilant and on guard. As the full moon rose, so too did a distant booming sound that grew each second into what eventually sounded in big, bounding footsteps, until it stopped at the door of Henry Jekyll's house. There was a big battering knock as sweat began to form on Tracer's forehead. Instead of a smash and the slam of a door, a key turned and the door creaked open. There, in the doorway, stood a huge and shadowy figure that stirred fear as Tracer gulped at its glowing red eyes, as the being clenched its fists, readying to charge. A second later, the beast sprung into action and charged at Tracer. Tracer ran out into the street, teleporting past him and shooting her blasters at the back of the beast, hoping to lure him away from the home and away from Henry. A fight in the streets of London broke out as Tracer and the great beast of a man fought, bounding over rooftops and destroying all in their path. Then suddenly the beast spoke. "Why do you deny Hyde his prey, girl?" the beast bellowed. And then it jumped away. Tracer lost track of Hyde as she aimed her blasters all around, scouring for where he could have gone. Then, from below, the building crumbled as Hyde tore from beneath. Tracer was done for, as she feared she had no time to react. Then, in that moment, her harness glowed as she was propelled by a force that launched her through a bizarre yet familiar place. As she came out the other side, she was back to where she left, on the rooftop of the building as she panted from the fight that she had just been in. Though next to her, oddly, was Henry Jekyll. Welcome to the hero reveal of Jekyll, the mysterious physician of the 18th century London. Jekyll has 200 health and he is a support hero. Jekyll's left click in basic attack is called Chemist Vials. By using the left click button, Jekyll throws a vial of healing infused serum within a medium range that explodes at the target location, healing any allies in the splash effect zone. Chemist Vials heals a total of 60 health per successful direct hit to each ally and 40 health to allies affected via the splash healing effect. Think similarly to Anna's biotic grenade, but Jekyll is able to throw more than just one before he runs out of ammunition. If using the right click instead, this hits enemies with a poisonous vial that does damage and inflicts splash damage as it explodes to nearby enemies. I haven't quite worked out the best damage for this ability, as Jekyll is meant to be a healer, so having it too high will make him far too strong, and too low will essentially make him useless in combat. Chemist Vials has 6 ammunition before Jekyll must reload. The reload time is 1.5 seconds. Jekyll's E ability is called Chemical Spill. Jekyll throws a serum vial to a target location, and on the ground this will leave a puddle of chemical liquid with a diameter of 8 meters, which is a little bit smaller than Winston's projectile barrier. When allies or Jekyll move through the chemical spill, they gain a 25% boost to their movement speed and a 20% damage reduction that lasts for 4 seconds after leaving the puddle and will reactivate again if the puddle is re-entered and while it remains on the field. The puddle remains for 5 seconds before disappearing and starting the cooldown. The cooldown for Chemical Spill is 14 seconds. Jekyll's left shift ability is called Double Dose. Double Dose reduces Jekyll's ultimate meter charge by 10 points when used, keeping him sane for longer and also giving players more control over the character and his next ability. The cooldown for Double Dose is 12 seconds. And now on to Jekyll's ultimate ability, which is called Hyde. When the ultimate meter reaches 100, Jekyll will forcefully transform into the monstrous Hyde, forcing players to use the ultimate the moment the timer is full. When transformed, Hyde has a passive that is always active called Evil Aura. This increases the damage that all allies near him will receive from enemy players by 45% within a 10 meter diameter to Hyde. While Hyde is powerful, this passive can act as a curse for your allied teammates, turning Hyde into a double-edged sword while he is in play, and leaving your team open to being wiped out quickly if not used carefully. Similar to Winston's Primal Rage ability, Hyde now becomes a more damage-dealing type role and gains a new pool of abilities and a large boost to his health, movement speed, and damage output. While Hyde is active, he is able to climb up walls, much like Hanzo and Kiriko. Hyde's basic attacks become deadly sweeping fists at short range as he swings them at nearby enemies to deal great amounts of damage. Hyde's left shift ability turns into Monstrous Charge, to where this allows Hyde to rush enemies and close the distance between them quickly in the direction he is facing. If Hyde happens to come into contact with an enemy along his rush path, he will stop at the enemy instead with a slam that will knock the target and stun them for 1 second. Cooldown from Monstrous Charge is 5 seconds. Hyde's E ability now becomes Grab and Throw, to where Hyde can grab a target enemy nearby, lifting them above him and carrying them for up to 4 seconds. Enemies that are carried are helpless and cannot attack, though while they are grabbed, they also cannot receive any damage until they are thrown or released. If Hyde uses the E button again while holding an enemy, he can throw the grabbed enemy to a target location in front of him, dealing large amounts of damage to the target when they collide with either a wall, object, or the ground. If the thrown target collides with other enemies, the enemy's hit will also take damage and get knocked like bowling pins. If Hyde is carrying an enemy and the 4 seconds times out, the enemy will manage to break out of the grab, and this will stun Hyde for 1.5 seconds after. Cooldown for grab and throw is 5 seconds. Hyde is active on the field for a total of 10 seconds before he will turn back into Jekyll, or if he dies, he will die like any normal character. As always, Jekyll will require some tweaking to get him right for an in-game experience, but I do believe he'd be a really fun character to play. Initially, I did have Hyde's passive deal constant damage to nearby allies instead of the 45% increase to damage they receive, but thought this way was a little better, as players potentially abusing the fact that they could kill all their allies and essentially turning on a friendly fire option would not have been fun in the long run, especially if you had a Hyde player that just wanted to watch the world and your team burn. Anyways guys, thank you for watching the hero reveal of Jekyll, the mysterious physician of 18th century London.